Hi guys, so I will read Cinderella. Many years ago, in a faraway land, lived a lovely maiden named Cinderella. She had a stepmother and two stepsisters who were unkind and disagreeable most of the time. Instead of loving her gentle, winsome ways, they made her work very hard from early morning until the darkness fell. And even then, she had no place to call her own except a corner of the hearth, where she often sat among the cinders, and so was called Cinderella. Cinderella, come tidy my room, or you'd better not feed that stale bread to the birds. It's all you're going to have for supper. The lazy, wicked sisters would shout. There was never a kind word, but Cinderella did not complain. Strangely enough, she even grew more beautiful with each passing day. High above the village stood a castle. Here lived a good king with his only son, a handsome young prince. Many of their courtiers were not unlike Cinderella's stepmother and sisters, haughty, vain, and selfish. Not a single maiden could be found among them who was sweet and generous enough to be worthy of a prince and half the kingdom. And so it came to pass that the king, by express command, invited all the maidens throughout his realm to attend a ball at the palace, in the hope that thus his son might meet the princess of his choice. Up and down every street in the village, frenzied preparations were being made. Seamstresses had never been so busy. At Cinderella's cottage, all were hard at work, beautifying the two ugly stepsisters who had been invited. Poor Cinderella had not, but she scurried about pressing the yards of silk, shirring the bolts of lace, and sitting up very late at night, snipping basting threads. When it was almost time for the party, she gazed wistfully at the finished gowns until her stepmother snapped, "Stop dreaming! How they'd love to see a cinder girl like you at a ball. Get on with your work." She frowned and waggled a long finger at Cinderella. The haughty sisters stopped primping long enough to exchange glances and nod. They drove away in their coach without even waving farewell, and Cinderella crept into her chimney corner, hugging the old cat and staring into the fire. Suddenly she heard a swoosh and looked up. Out of nowhere appeared a strange little lady. The cat dove behind the coal box and Cinderella stared in wonder as a glow filled the room. Cinderella, I am your fairy godmother. Why are you so sad? Well, I wish, Cinderella could not go on. You wish to go to the ball. Is that not so? Yes, oh yes, I do, with all my heart. Well, my child, you have been a good girl, and you shall go. Then the fairy godmother leaned close to Cinderella's ear and said, But first, bring from the garden the biggest pumpkin you can find. Cinderella had no idea how a pumpkin would help her, but she was so happy she did as she was asked. She staggered up to the door with an enormous yellow one. Quickly, the fairy godmother scooped out its insides, tapped it gently with her wand, and ring. The pumpkin became a glittering golden coach. She now requested a mouse trap with 6 mice, next a rat trap, and then 6 lizards. All of these things she touched with her wand, and jumping into place were a coachman, a splendid one with green livery, 6 trim footmen, and 6 sleek and spirited horses. Now, Cinderella, you have a carriage to take you to the ball. When Cinderella could speak, she cried, Oh, but my clothes, these rags, they're all I have in the world. Quick as a wink, the fairy godmother flicked the wand, and the girl was transformed too. Every cinder and bit of soot vanished. Her hair was silken and gleaming. It fell over the shoulders of a fragile gown, which sparkled with jewels, and peeping from under her filmy skirts were 2 little slippers of shining glass. Now you are quite ready, my child, said the fairy godmother. But please remember this, unless you return at the first stroke of 12, your coach will become a pumpkin, your coachman a big white rat, your horses frightened mice, your footmen moist lizards, and your dress nothing but rags. Cinderella was almost afraid, but the fairy godmother smiled and led her out into the moonlight to her coach. When the maiden turned with shining eyes to thank this wonderful lady, she was not there at all. In fact, she had completely vanished. At the same instant, the coachman cracked his silver whip, and the horses fairly flew up the hill, bearing Cinderella to the ball. Back in the cushiony seats, the girl held tightly to the pillows and tried to repeat her fairy godmother's warning. In the great hall, shimmering with 1,000 candles, the prince caught sight of Cinderella the moment she arrived. Joy danced in her heart as he made his way toward her. Through the huge assembly of fine people and bowed low over her hand. She was the loveliest person the prince had ever seen in his whole life. While everyone whispered excitedly about the enchanting, unknown guest, he stood bedazzled by her side. Through the night they danced. Cinderella was as light as a puff of thistle down. In no time at all, the clock in the tower began to strike 12. With a start, Cinderella slipped out of her partner's arms and raced for the palace gates. She paused hardly at all when one of the little glass slippers flew off and lay twinkling in the dark grass. But the poor prince in pursuit stopped. He picked it up and gently placed it in his velvet pocket. Cinderella was far out of sight as he turned back, vowing to search every inch of the land to find the radiant princess who had so suddenly run away. When Cinderella reached the courtyard, her coach was gone. Only a big pumpkin stood by the gates, surrounded by squealing mice, and she was in rags. No one noticed the little beggar who fled down the hill. Once safe inside her cottage, Cinderella curled up small on the hearth and slept. After a fanfare of trumpets next day, the king announced that the prince had already set off to visit each home to find the one maiden who could wear the little glass slipper. All morning the step-sisters wiggled their toes uncertainly in their satin shoes. They didn't even trouble to tell Cinderella the exciting news until a page announced the arrival of the prince himself. Shooing Cinderella into the scullery, the three women curtsied nervously. The mother purred sweetly, "Sire, these are my daughters who attended the ball." To them she added, "Sit down, my dears, and try the slipper." The page knelt and carefully tried each girl's foot. The first sister's foot was too long and slim and wouldn't do at all. The second sister's foot was so plump that only her great toe would go in. Flushed and angry, they fled to their room. "Have you no other daughters, madame?" the prince inquired, rising to leave. "Well, no, not really," stammered the wicked woman, "except a grimy little kitchen maid. Certainly she is of no interest to you, my lord. I ask that she she be seen?" commanded the prince. Unable to protest, the stepmother shoved Cinderella into the room. She stood with downcast eyes, lest the prince recognize her in wretched rags and clumsy shoes. "Be seated, miss," said the page, while the two sisters, peering around the edge of their door, snickered and sneered. Timidly, Cinderella thrust a bare foot into the tiny slipper. There was a gasp of surprise, except from Cinderella, for of course it fitted to perfection, just as it had the evening before. Speechless, the prince looked into Cinderella's eyes, and as she smiled, her tattered rags vanished again. Standing on the hearth was the princess he truly loved, clad in her sparkling gown and laughing with delight at his astonishment. With a cry of joy, he carried her out of the humble cottage and lifted her onto his horse. Away they rode, leaving the three cross and ugly women shouting and quarreling among themselves. Goodness knows what happened to them, but gentle Cinderella and her prince had a long and happy life together. So guys, I hope you like that reading. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to this channel, ScorpioAnnYT, and please click on the bell next to the subscribe button down below so you will know when I upload a video. Please go to my husband's ASMR channel also, Michael Soothing ASMR, and to my daughter's 3 channels, Art and Beauty Freak and Ariaville and Naturally Vegan 011. Please go to my 2 other ASMR channels also, Scorpio and Scorpio and ASMR. Please comment on this video and please share it. Thank you so much for watching. I love you.